Hi, I'm Mike, PokeTips Mike, and a few days ago, Pokemon released their first ever DLC expansion, the Isle of Armor, which added a whole new island to explore, gave us new content to play around with, and brought over 100 Pokemon back into the game. Now, this is actually really different because usually Pokemon doesn't do DLC. Instead, they release a base pair of games, then releasing an updated third version of that game a year or two later with new features, new areas, and new Pokemon or forms. But with Sword and Shield, so far it seems like they're taking a different route there, scrapping that Crystal version and just giving us an update patch that expands on the base games directly. And the price of that? Well, where I live, it's $30 US. So it's been a couple days, and I've spent a lot of time playing the DLC. And one of the questions that I've been getting asked the most is, do I think the DLC is worth it? So today, I'm going to be talking about that. If I think it's worth it, what I like about it so far, and what I don't really like about it. Just keep in mind, these are my opinions on what I think about the DLC. If you don't agree with me, that's all cool. I'm definitely not telling you how you should think about this, and I encourage you, come up with your own opinion on the DLC, and even if you want, let me know about it in the comment section below. But before we get started, this video is sponsored by ExpressVPN. So the internet is pretty wild. Pretty much all the data you send while browsing the internet is logged somewhere, whether by your internet service provider or on unencrypted Wi-Fi networks. Hackers can try and listen in and steal your data like passwords and even banking information. But ExpressVPN allows you to take back your privacy by encrypting your data and rerouting your connection through a secure server. And it's actually pretty easy to use on your phone or on your PC. All it takes is one click and you're ready to go. But you could also use ExpressVPN for a lot more than just privacy. One of my favorite things to do with it is use it for Netflix. There are lots of shows on Netflix that are only available in certain countries, but with ExpressVPN you can change your location to appear like you're in one of those countries and boom, you'll be able to watch the show. One of my all-time favorite shows, How I Met Your Mother, isn't on the US Netflix, but using ExpressVPN, I can just change my location to Canada, and now I can watch it anytime I want, which is pretty cool. Go to expressvpn.com/PokeTipsMike and find out how you can get 3 months free with a money-back guarantee. And you know it's good when it rhymes like that, 3 months free with a money-back guarantee. Thanks a bunch to ExpressVPN for sponsoring this video. Now for me, the way I look at this DLC is, even though it costs $30, I'm viewing it as a $15 DLC. And that's simply because when you buy this DLC, you get access to what's out right now, the Isle of Armor, and in November you get access to the Crown Tundra. So since we're going to be getting two major updates with two different storylines, two different sets of content, I think it's pretty fair to value this as a $15 DLC. And for $15, sure, I think it's definitely worth $15. But I do think a major point here is I do enjoy Pokemon Sword and Shield. I think they're pretty fun games. Definitely not the best in the series by far, but I enjoy them. I have fun playing Sword and Shield. So expanding a game that I find pretty fun for $15 is definitely worth it for me. I would think that for people who don't really enjoy Sword and Shield, didn't really like the base game, this DLC is probably not going to change their mind. And the Pokemon, the battles, the animations, it's more of the same. So if you didn't really enjoy Sword and Shield in the first place, I don't think this DLC is going to change your mind about it. But if you had fun playing Sword and Shield, in my opinion, this DLC is even better. There was definitely a lot of polish, a lot of quality of life improvements put into this DLC, so again, if you enjoyed the base game, you'll probably really enjoy the DLC too, and I definitely think for 15 bucks, it's worth it. So with that being said, let's jump into the things that I like about the DLC. Now the first and probably literally the biggest thing is the island itself. I think the Isle of Armor is beautiful. I love the varying environments. You have forest areas, you have a desert area, you have a vast ocean to explore. I love how one of the first things you see when you get to the Isle of Armor is a massive Wailord in the distance. It was just so cool seeing that when I got here. I love how all over the island, just like in the wild area, you can control the camera. One of my favorite parts about playing through the wild area in Pokemon Sword and Shield was the controllable camera. It's really nice being able to turn the camera, get better viewing angles at certain things, and just being able to see the whole environment in general. And when you're on a beautiful island like this with so much to look around at and see, having this really expands the world for me. I really wish that all of Pokemon Sword and Shield had a controllable camera. I always find myself whenever I leave an area like this, I'm always fiddling around with the stick trying to control the camera and turn the angles around, and I can't. So I'm hoping that going forward, everything is like this. I know the Crown Tundra is going to be like this too. I'm hoping the next Pokemon game on the Switch, the whole world is controllable with the camera. I think that's fantastic. Pokemon should definitely move in that direction. I also really like how the Isle of Armor is open world in nature. As soon as you get to the Isle of Armor, you can basically go anywhere on the island. You want to go from the train station all the way to the back to the desert area? Well, you're not going to see any Psyducks standing in a line blocking your way. Open world Pokemon has always been such an interesting concept to me. I really wonder if a whole main series Pokemon game was open world, would it turn out well? I think they did a great job making the Isle of Armor open world though, so I definitely would love to see more of that in the future as well. Third, another thing that I really like about this DLC is that they brought Pokemon following you back. This was something that we had no idea about until the DLC actually came out. It was really genuinely a surprise when I was playing through the storyline and I got there and Mustard told me, oh, by the way, your Pokemon can follow you now on the Isle of Armor. This is a feature I've loved in every single Pokemon game that's had it. I loved it in Let's Go. I'm currently playing through Heart Gold and Soul Silver right now, and I'm enjoying that feature so much in those games, and having it back in the newest Pokemon title, Sword and Shield, is great. This, like having Pokemon roaming around in the overworld environment, really expands the immersion of the Pokemon experience for me, and I'm always going to be happy to see it back. However, I do have some complaints with Pokemon following you around. I feel like they did some weird stuff with it in this game, and I'll get to that later on. And finally, the last thing I really like about this DLC is the music. I feel like Pokemon games have always had such a great soundtrack, and the Isle of Armor, I definitely think they did a good job with that as well. I think the overworld theme for the Isle of Armor itself is really good. I love what they did with Mustard's theme. Avery's theme is really good. If there's one thing I could always count on in a Pokemon game, I could always count on it having good music. Other than that, I think they did pretty well with the rest of the DLC. The story on the island itself is nice. I like the character development you see if you do all the little mini quest lines and everything as well. Having returning Pokemon come back is great. I just wish they could somehow get all of the old Pokemon back into Sword and Shield, but whatever. There are more coming back in the Crown Tundra, and they brought my boy Shinx back, so I'm pretty happy. New Pokemon-wise, it's a pretty typical amount for a third version game. Would have definitely liked more, but I'm not complaining. And there's still plenty of stuff that I really haven't gotten to mess around with yet, and I've been playing the games a lot, like restricted sparring and messing around with all those Cramomatic recipes. So again, for 15 bucks, not bad. I enjoyed the base game of Sword and Shield, and post-game wise, I just always felt like there weren't enough areas to explore after you've beaten Sword and Shield, so having this whole new island added is pretty awesome. But now, let's talk about the stuff that I don't really like about the DLC. And I think since I mentioned it a little bit before, I'm going to go into it more now, with Pokemon following you. Now, I know that's weird, because that's one of the things I've been waiting for to come back in Pokemon games forever. I've loved it in every single game that it's been, and I like it in Sword and Shield. But I feel like they got it a little wrong in this game. With a lot of the Pokemon that follow you around, they are just extremely slow. Really, really slow. Like, you'll just be walking at a normal pace, and they'll get so far behind you that they have to teleport to you to catch up. I think by now we've all seen some of the funny videos that are getting shared everywhere, where Meltan takes forever to catch up to you, and even Dragapult, you know, one of the faster Pokemons in the game, it just can't keep up with you for its life. In the previous Pokemon games that had Pokemon following you, they were always right behind you. They would basically always keep up with you. I think in Let's Go there were a few Pokemon that were slower than others and might straggle behind a little bit, but it seems like in Sword and Shield there's so many Pokemon that just can't keep up with you, and it's just bizarre to me. I think what happened here is they used a lot of the speeds that Pokemon have in Pokemon Camp and used that as a reference for how Pokemon should be when they follow you, but in practice it just kind of seems weird. It doesn't work that well. If they kept it more like Let's Go's following system, I feel like it would be perfect. And another thing I just find weird about the whole following Pokemon system in this game is why can they only follow you on the Isle of Armor? I get that in-game they say it could only happen on the Isle of Armor, but is there really a good reason why they can't follow you around in the Galar region? And it's just got me wondering, are they going to be able to follow you around in the Crown Tundra, or is that just going to be an exclusive Isle of Armor feature? I just wish the game was consistent in that regard. Now, another thing that kind of seemed weird to me about this whole DLC was the early parts of the storyline. Early on, when you first start the storyline, they treat you like a novice trainer, even if you're already the champion of the Galar region. Now, I get that they made the Isle of Armor accessible even when you first start up Sword and Shield. You could go there basically as soon as you get to the wild area. but I really feel like they should have made this whole Isle of Armor with the post-game in mind. It's strange to me that when we get to this island, even though I've beaten the game already, nobody on this island seems to recognize that until I get halfway through the story. And my rival that keeps popping up and battling me has some really weak under-evolved Pokemon, even though they're scaled up to level 60. Again, it's just kind of weird to me because in the rest of the game, if I run around, people will say, oh, that's the champion, that's the champion. But on the Isle, even though they clearly know who Champion Leon is because it's mentioned that he trained at the dojo, and there's also a TV in the dojo itself, so you can't tell me they don't know what's going on. And again, another slight complaint I have here is the level scaling. Before the Isle of Armor came out, we got some incorrect information that basically said that the trainer's Pokemon you would battle in the Isle of Armor would scale to the highest leveled Pokemon in your party. And honestly, that would have been a good challenge. If you had level 100 Pokemon in your party, the trainers you would fight, mainly your rival and Mustard, they would have level 100 Pokemon. And if you're worried about people exploiting that by bringing low-leveled Pokemon to fight low-leveled trainers, maybe make it so this area has a level floor, where let's say every trainer starts off at level 60, and then if your Pokemon are higher than level 60, it'll scale from there. But no, if you come in here using your strongest Pokemon, something at level 100, you're just going to obliterate everybody in here. Again, that's something you could easily rectify yourself by bringing in weaker Pokemon, but it's just kind of weird to me because before the island came out, Pokemon gave us a big event where they gave us a bunch of experience candies to level up our Pokemon with, so you'd think that the trainers here would be really tough, but not really a challenge at all. Other than that, I just have some minor complaints, but those are mainly just complaints with the Sword and Shield engine itself, like the camera acting up weird in some places, like your character just totally disappearing, and just raid battles themselves being so slow even with animations off. I love doing raid battles, I wish they were a little bit faster though. Sometimes with all the stuff going on in those battles, it feels like they could take forever. But yeah, despite those complaints, I still think the Isle of Armor DLC is great. I'm having a great time playing through it. And naturally, when you spent the better part of your last 3 days just playing Pokemon, you're gonna find some stuff to complain about. So yeah, for me personally, I think $15 for this DLC is very, very fair. Having a whole new island to explore, all the content you could do, the mini storyline on the island itself, being able to turn your non-Gigantamax Pokemon into Gigantamax versions of themselves, I think it's great. Definitely a good value for me because I enjoyed Sword and Shield, and having more of that, I'm okay with it. But if you personally view this DLC as $30 and you don't count the Crown Tundra, then no, I definitely think that would be way too expensive. So my friends, down in the comments section, let me know what you think about the DLC so far. Have you been playing it? Are you enjoying it? Did you not get it? Let me know, I'm curious to hear what you think about this DLC. As always, my friends, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. It means a lot to me. And if you enjoyed this video and you haven't already, make sure you give it a big thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel if you're new and you want to see more of my Pokemon content. Thanks again for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.